The Last Gift. A story about a brother, a dog, and the love that outlives its hiding place. Part 1. The cold version. The notification appeared at 7:14 in the morning, between a conference call reminder and a quarterly earnings alert. CEO So Hae-won named among top 40 under 40 in Korean business. When asked who she is most grateful to, she paused, then named the brother who abandoned her. Hae-won read it twice, set her phone face down on the desk, picked up her coffee. The coffee was cold. The journalist's name was Park Ji-sun. He had the kind of face that looked perpetually apologetic, soft around the eyes, quick to soften further. He sat across from Hae-won in the glass-walled conference room on the 31st floor and placed a battered composition notebook on the table between them. "I found your brother," he said. Hae-won looked at the notebook, not at him. "Then you wasted your trip. I don't have a brother." His name was So Jun-ho. Was. She heard it, didn't move. "I know what his name was," she said. "I gave it to him." Park Ji-sun's hands rested flat on the table. He didn't push the notebook toward her. He just left it there, in the middle distance between them, the way you leave food for a stray that won't come close. "He kept a journal," the journalist said. "Before he died, he left it, we believe intentionally, where it could be found." Jun-ho has always had a talent for theater. He died 14 months ago, pancreatic cancer, stage 4, diagnosed when he was 21. The coffee cup was cold against her palm. She set it down very carefully, as if the sound it made against the saucer mattered. "You're mistaken," she said, "or lying. I have the death certificate." "Then someone stole his identity. He's good at disappearing." Park Ji-sun looked at her for a long moment. Something moved through his expression. Not pity, exactly. Something more careful than pity. "CEO So," he said, "I've read the notebook, every page." "Would you like to read it?" "No." "Would you like me to read it to you?" "No." "Then what would you like me to do with it?" Hae-won stood. She walked to the window. Seoul spread below her, gray and enormous, the Han River a flat ribbon of pewter light cutting through the city's middle. "Burn it," she said. A silence. "I can't do that." "Then publish it. I don't care. Jun-ho wrote his whole life for an audience. Give him what he wanted." She heard the journalist gather his things, the scrape of a chair. Then, at the door, the journal was found next to his body, CEO So, wrapped in a plastic bag. He tied it shut so the rain wouldn't get in. She didn't turn around. The door closed. The segment aired 4 days later. Hae-won watched it from a car. Her assistant Bora held the phone so she wouldn't have to. The footage showed Park Ji-sun behind a news desk, the composition notebook in front of him, his face arranged in the careful neutral of a man who knows he is about to say something that changes things. "What I have here," he said, "is a document that asks nothing of us except that we listen." On screen, he opened the notebook. "My name is So Jun-ho. I'm 21 years old, and I have approximately 4 months to live. I'm writing this because I don't have anyone to talk to, and I'm not ready to stop talking yet. I hope that's okay. I hope someone, somewhere, finds this useful, even if it's only as evidence that I existed. Dear Journal, thank you for being here." Hae-won looked out the car window. "Turn it off," she said. Bora turned it off. They rode the rest of the way in silence. At a red light, Hae-won noticed a child on the sidewalk pressing their face against a toy store window. Both hands flat on the glass, breathing fog. She looked away. The segment went viral by nightfall. By morning, 3 things had happened. First, a woman named Choi Mi-seon had posted a photograph on a private blog, unlisted for 4 years, now suddenly public. The photograph showed 2 young people at a street food cart, a woman with close-cropped hair and oil-stained fingers, and a thin boy with eyes too large for his narrowing face, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. The caption read, "I called him Junie. He called me Nuna even though I wasn't his sister. I've been looking for him for 2 years. I'm sorry, Junie. I didn't look hard enough." Second, a clinic in Mapo-gu confirmed that a young man matching Junho's description had visited 3 times in the winter before his death, always paying in cash, always declining admission, always leaving before they could finish their intake form. Third, someone dug up an old university forum post from 3 years prior, a thread about a freshman named So Junho who had abruptly withdrawn from the engineering program mid-semester, citing personal reasons. His professor had responded in the thread, "Junho was one of the most gifted students I've taught in 15 years. Wherever you are, come back. The door is open." The thread had 4,000 replies now. None of them were from Junho. Haewon's publicist sent 12 messages before 9 a.m. Her board sent 2. Her assistant Bora said nothing, which was how Haewon knew it was serious. At 11 a.m., Haewon called Park Ji-sun. "Read it on air," she said. "All of it. I'll give you permission." A pause. "CEO So, it's what he wanted. An audience. Give it to him." Another pause. Longer. "Are you sure? Do you need me to repeat myself?" She hung up. Bora appeared in the doorway with a cup of tea, set it on the desk, didn't say anything, left. Haewon stared at the tea for a long time. Then she opened her laptop and found the live stream preview page for the segment. The title read, "The Last Journal of So Junho, a Live Reading. Comment count, 84,000 and climbing." She closed the laptop. That evening, the segment aired live. Haewon did not watch it. She sat in her apartment on the 34th floor, the one she'd moved into 3 years ago after the company's first profitable quarter, after she could finally afford something with enough rooms that emptiness had somewhere to go. And she poured a glass of wine, and she looked at the city lights, and she told herself she felt nothing. She was very good at telling herself things. The wine glass was still full when her phone began to ring. She watched it light up. Bora. Then her publicist. Then a number she didn't recognize. Then Bora again. She picked up a book, set it down. Picked up the wine, set it down. At 11:47 p.m., she opened her phone and found the stream. Park Ji-sun was mid-page. His voice was steady, but something behind his eyes wasn't. Took the night bus to the other side of the city because the hospital there had a different payment system, and I thought maybe I could negotiate. I couldn't. I walked back. 4 hours. My shoes have a hole in the left sole, and by the time I got home, the sock was soaked through, which sounds like the beginning of a sad poem, but is actually just what my Tuesday was like. Haewon pressed stop. She sat very still. Then she opened it again. I called her today. I didn't mean to. I was outside the pharmacy, and my hands did it before I could think. She picked up on the second ring, which means she hadn't blocked my number yet. I said her name. She said mine. There was this pause, and I thought maybe. She said, "You'd better not be calling to ask for money." I hung up. "I'm sorry, Nuna. That wasn't fair to you. You didn't know why I was calling. You couldn't have known." You were just protecting yourself, the way you always have, because I taught you that I couldn't be trusted, and then I called you anyway from a payphone outside a pharmacy at 9 in the morning and expected you to just, I don't know what I expected. I just wanted to hear your voice. Stop. Haewon sat on the floor of her apartment. She didn't remember getting there. The carpet was pale gray, very soft. She pressed her palm flat against it. The wine glass was on the coffee table above her. She didn't reach for it. Her phone was face down beside her knee. She was fine. She was completely fine. Part 2. What he actually wrote. From the Journal of Seo Junho, transcribed during the broadcast of May 11th. October 14th. Dear Journal, hello. I bought you at a convenience store for 2,400 won. You have a blue cover and 60 pages, and you smell like nothing, which I appreciate. You are the most reliable thing I own right now. I want to tell you what happened. Not because it needs to be recorded, but because if I don't tell someone, I'm going to explode, and you're the only one here. Huan doesn't know I'm sick. I've been trying to figure out how to say that without making it sound like a tragedy, but I'm running out of approaches. The short version, I went to the doctor in August thinking I had acid reflux. I don't have acid reflux. The medium version, they found a mass. I asked how bad. They looked at each other in a way doctors do when they're deciding how to build a sentence. Then they built it. The long version, I'm writing it down, in here, because I have nowhere else to put it. I left the hospital and walked to the river and sat on a bench for 3 hours watching the water. A heron landed about 4 meters from me. We looked at each other for a long time. I thought, Huan would know what kind of heron this is. She used to know everything.
When we were small, she had a field guide to birds that she kept under her bed, and on weekends she would read me the entries like bedtime stories. The yellow-throated bunting, the little egret, the common kingfisher. She read them with complete seriousness, as if these were important facts I needed to survive. I think she was right. I don't know what kind of heron it was, but I sat with it for a long time, and that helped. October 22nd. I left. I packed one bag and I took the things that mattered. The notebook Mom gave me for my 16th birthday, the one with the map of the world embossed on the cover. I used to trace the continents with my finger before bed. The dog-eared copy of The Stranger that Huan threw at me once during an argument and I kept because it seemed appropriate. 3 changes of clothes and the photograph. The photograph is from our parents last summer. We went to Gyeongju. Mom wore a yellow hat and kept losing it to the wind and laughing every time. Dad put his arm around me and said, "You're going to be taller than me by next year, Junie." And he was wrong. I never got the chance to be taller than him. Huan is in the photograph too, standing slightly apart from the rest of us, already becoming the person she was going to have to be. Even then. She's 20 in this picture. Our parents died 6 months later. She carried everything after that. I watched her do it. I watched her negotiate with creditors in the kitchen while I was supposed to be asleep, her voice perfectly level, her hands flat on the table. I watched her eat half portions and say she wasn't hungry. I watched her work 3 jobs and still show up to my school plays, sitting in the back so she could leave early if a client called. I watched her become invulnerable. I don't know how to tell her I'm sick without dismantling that. So I left instead. I said terrible things on my way out. I told her she was cold. I told her I'd found someone who actually knew how to enjoy life. I watched her face close like a door, and I thought, good. Good. Stay closed. Stay safe. The bag is lighter than I expected. I'm in a Jimjilbang near Dongdaemun, 9,000 won a night. The floor is warm. November 4th. I found a room. It's above a dry cleaning shop in Mapo. The owner, Mr. O, is 73, hard of hearing, and deeply uninterested in me. He rents to me on a week-by-week basis and asks no questions. My window faces a wall. I have been managing the pain with over-the-counter medication and a specific type of mental negotiation that I am getting better at. The technique is, do not think about the next month, only the next hour. The hour is manageable, the month is not. My upstairs neighbor plays trot music at full volume between 6 and 8 p.m. every evening. At first this made me want to scream. Now I find it comforting. It means someone is up there. Someone is okay. November 11th, I met someone. Her name is Choi Mi-son, and she works in a car repair shop 2 blocks from here. I found her when my bag strap broke, and I was trying to figure out if I could mend it with the things in my room. I could not, and she was on her way somewhere, and she just stopped. She took the bag, looked at the strap, went back into the shop. Came out 4 minutes later with it mended. She said, "You look like you haven't eaten today." I said, "I ate at noon." She said, "It's 8 p.m. I didn't have an answer for that. She took me to a kimbap place. She ordered enough for 2. When I tried to pay, she said she'd arm wrestle me for it. And something about the absolute seriousness with which she said this made me laugh so hard I had to put my head on the table. I haven't laughed like that since in a long time. She told me she was saving up to open her own shop, that she'd been working in other people's garages since she was 15, and she knew every kind of engine they made, and she was tired of making money for men who didn't know the difference between a coolant flush and a prayer. I told her I'd been studying engineering before I withdrew. She looked at me differently after that. Not better or worse, just differently. She didn't ask why I'd withdrawn. I didn't tell her. November 23rd. I need to tell you about the dog. I found him at the bus terminal. He was behind a pillar, sitting very still, watching the crowds with the expression of someone waiting for a bus they no longer believe will come. He was small and brownish yellow, and one of his front paws was held slightly off the ground. I walked past him. I walked back. We looked at each other. He licked my hand with the seriousness of a formal agreement. I named him Harangue. It means the person who leans on you.
I named him that on purpose. I took him to a vet. The vet said the paw was manageable. A tendon issue, would require some treatment, but nothing surgical. Then she looked at me with the expression I have been seeing on medical professionals for 3 months now. She said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm working on it." She said the treatment for Harangue would be 180,000 won up front. I had 94,000 won. She watched me do the math on my face. She said, "Bring him back tomorrow. Bring whatever you have." I don't know why she said that. I don't know if she was being professional or kind or both. But I went home and I held Harangue very carefully on account of the paw, and I thought about my sister. Haewon used to do things like that. She used to find the soft spot in a situation and press gently without announcing it.
When I was 10 and broke my arm falling out of a tree I didn't tell her about, a tree I had specifically been forbidden from climbing, she didn't tell our parents. She just wrapped my wrist in a compression bandage from the first aid kit and looked at me steadily and said, "You're an idiot, Junie, but I'll go with you to the clinic." She went with me. She lied to the admitting nurse, calmly, without hesitation. She held my hand through the x-ray. She told me afterward, in the cab home, "You're lucky I love you, or I would have told Mom." I miss her so much I don't know what to do with it. December 3rd. The money is getting tight. Miseon found me part-time work helping with inventory at a warehouse in Mapo. It's 3 days a week, loading work mostly. I can do it. I am managing. I've been trying not to use the emergency fund. The emergency fund is Haewon's credit card, which she put on my phone before everything fell apart between us, back when falling apart seemed preventable. I haven't used it in 2 months. It's still there. Some nights I look at my phone and think, I could just call. Harangue sleeps curled against my stomach. He is extremely warm. He smells like a dog, which sounds obvious, but I mean it specifically. That warm, living smell, animal and safe. When the pain gets bad at night, I press my face into his fur and I breathe. It helps. December 14th. Miseon found out. I had an episode at the warehouse. My vision went strange and I had to sit on the floor, and Miseon was there and she saw everything. My hands, the way I was breathing, the way I looked at her when I came back to myself. She drove me to her apartment. She made me sit on her couch. She made tea. She set it in front of me. She said nothing for a very long time. Then she said, "How long?" I said, "Probably 4 months from October. So 2.5 months left, maybe." She didn't cry. I was glad. I couldn't have handled it if she'd cried. She said, "Is there anyone?" I thought about Haewon. I thought about her voice on the phone 2 months ago. "You'd better not be calling to ask for money." I thought about her working 3 jobs while I slept. I thought about the field guide under her bed. I said, "There's my sister, but she's better off not knowing." Miseon looked at me for a long time. She said, "That's not your call." I said, "Yes, it is." She didn't push. She poured more tea. She said, "Eat something." I ate something. December 27th. Miseon tried to take me to a hospital. I refused. We argued about it in her car for 45 minutes outside the emergency entrance. She is stubborn. I am also stubborn.
We are, I think, equally matched. In the end, I said, Mise-en-scène.
If I go in there, they're going to call Haewon, and I need you to understand that this is the last thing I want. She looked at me. She said, "Why?" And I tried to explain it. I said, she spent 4 years holding everything together by herself. She works 18-hour days. She barely eats. She has given everything she has to rebuilding what we lost. If she finds out about this, she will stop everything. She will redirect everything toward me. She will use money we don't have on treatment that won't work, and she will convince herself it's her fault, and she will break herself doing it. And I can't. I cannot be the thing that breaks her. I cannot watch that happen. Mise-en looked at the hospital entrance. She looked at me. She said, "You've thought about this a lot." I said, "It's mostly what I think about." She started the car. She didn't say anything else, but she reached across and put her hand briefly on the back of mine, just for a second. Then she drove. I think that might be the kindest thing anyone has ever done for me. January 8th. I slipped up. Harang needed a refill on his medication, and I didn't have enough, and I used the card. Just 30,000 won. I told myself I'd pay it back somehow, which is not a plan, which I know. Haewon called 6 minutes later. I stared at the phone for 4 rings. 5. I picked up. She said, "Junho." Just that, my name, in that particular voice. I said, "Nuna." There was silence. Enormous silence. The kind that has years in it. Then she said, "I saw the charge." I said, "I know, I'm sorry, I'll..." She said, "I don't care about the money." I didn't know what to do with that. She said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm okay." She said, "That's not what I asked." Her voice was, she was trying. I could hear her trying. This is the hardest thing about Haewon. She is not cold. She has never been cold. She built the cold like a structure, piece by piece, because the alternative was standing in the open. I know this because I helped her build it. I handed her the bricks. I said, "Nuna, I need you to do something for me." She said, "What?" I said, "Block this number." Silence. She said, "Junie," I said, "I mean it. Block it. And use the card for anything you need. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to use it again. But please don't come looking. Please." She said, "Why are you doing this?" And I wanted to tell her. I wanted to say, "Because you are the thing I'm most afraid of losing, and you can't lose something you've already let go of, and I am trying to make this easier for you. I am trying to leave before you have to watch me go." I said, "I just need you to trust me." She said, very quietly, "I used to." And then she said, "Don't spend the money on whatever woman you're with." She hung up. She blocked my number 4 days later. I know because I tried to call. I'm not going to try again. That's okay. That's okay. January 24th. I went to see her, just once, from far away. I took the bus to Yeouido, and I stood across from her building and I waited. I had Harang in my coat. He fits, he's small, and it was cold. I could feel him breathing against my chest. She came out at 7:40 a.m. She was wearing the gray coat she's had for years, the one with the fraying collar. She still hasn't replaced it. I thought, Haewon, Nuna. "You can afford a new coat now." She looked thin, tired. And then she looked up briefly, scanning the street the way she always has, alert, cataloging, never quite at rest. And for a second, her gaze passed over the place where I was standing. I stepped behind a pillar. She walked on. I stayed behind the pillar for a long time. Harang licked my chin. February 3rd. I've started thinking about after. I want Haewon to be okay. I want her to have someone. She has always been so relentlessly alone, not because no one tries, but because she keeps the perimeter so clean. I think she learned that from me. I think I taught her that everyone leaves. I'm sorry, Nuna. I'm sorry I was the first one who taught you that. I want her to take Harang. He is very good. He is better at comfort than I am. He presses himself against you when the pain gets bad, and he doesn't require anything in return except proximity and the occasional piece of sweet potato. He also growls at entitled people, which I think Haewon would appreciate. I'm going to leave him at her building. She'll see him, and she'll take care of him. She takes care of everything. February 11th. This is the last entry. I've been doing the math. Miss Owen found out about my plan. I don't know how, I didn't tell her, but she showed up at my room at 6 a.m. and sat on the floor with me, and she didn't argue, she just said, "Let me be here for this part." I said, "You don't have to." She said, "I know." She stayed. We talked about her shop. She's close now, 2 more months of saving, and she'll have enough for the deposit. I told her she should call it something simple. She said she'd already decided, Miss Owen Motors. I told her that was a good name.
It is. At some point, Harang climbed into her lap, and they both fell asleep on my floor. I watched them sleep for a while. Then I wrote this. To whoever finds this, my name is So Junho. I was 21 years old. I was studying to be an engineer. I could make a very good cup of barley tea. I was not good at letting people help me. I'm working on that. To Misan, thank you. For the kimbap, for the car, for staying. Open the shop. It's going to be beautiful. To Harang, you are the best person I know, and you are a dog. To my sister, I know you're angry. You're allowed to be. You should be. But I need you to know, and this is the only thing I'm going to ask you to do for me, the only one. I need you to know that you were always enough. You were more than enough. Everything you did, every impossible thing you held together with your bare hands, I saw it. I saw all of it. You didn't fail me. I failed to let you help me. That's mine to carry.
Not yours. I love you, Nuna. Please eat something warm today. Junie. Part 3. After the broadcast ended at 11:52 p.m., by midnight, the stream had been viewed by over 2 million people. By morning, Choi Mison's blog had been found. Journalists had verified the death certificate. The clinic in Mapo-gu had confirmed the records. The university professor had given a statement. The landlord, Mr. O, had been interviewed at his dry cleaning shop, where he said only, "He was a quiet boy. He always paid on time. I didn't ask questions. I regret that." By 10 a.m., the search terms So Junho death, So Junho cancer, and So Junho real were trending simultaneously. By noon, Harang the dog was trending separately. A video had emerged from a security camera at Haewon's building, footage from 3 months prior, showing a thin figure in a dark coat kneeling outside the main entrance, tying something small and brown and living to the security post. The figure stayed kneeling for approximately 40 seconds, then stood, then walked away without looking back. The footage was grainy and the face was obscured, but the dog's tail was visible, wagging at the retreating figure. The dog in the video matched Harang. Harang, according to the journal, had been with Junho at the end. The comments were thousands deep. This is a man who was dying, and he was worried about leaving his dog somewhere safe. He was worried about his sister eating. I am not okay. Why is nobody talking about how he apologized to the journal for getting blood on it? Please eat something warm today. I need to lie down. Sioso needs to respond to this. Say something. Anything. Haewon's office was very quiet at 3 p.m. Bora had cleared the afternoon, had turned the phones to silent, had set a cup of tea on the desk, real tea, the barley kind, the kind Haewon's mother used to make, and then had stood in the doorway and said simply, "I found the broadcast recording," and set a tablet on the desk and left. The tea got cold. The recording stayed open on the tablet. Haewon sat with her hands flat on her desk, very still, and thought about nothing at all, which was not the same as feeling nothing. She thought about a phone call in November.
You'd better not be calling to ask for money. She had said that. She had said that to her brother, who was calling from a payphone, who was 21 years old, who had a mass growing in his body that she knew nothing about, who had saved her number instead of deleting it, who had picked up the phone and dialed and waited. She had said that. She pressed both hands over her mouth. The sound that came out anyway was not loud. It was very small. It was the sound of something that had been held for a long time, finally unable to stay held. Bora heard it through the door. She stood in the hallway for a moment. She looked at the other staff, who were pretending to work at their desks. Then she went back to her own desk and sat down and began fielding calls. She didn't go in. She knew Haewon well enough to know that going in was the wrong kind of help. She did one other thing. She pulled up the records and found what she'd been looking for, the security footage timestamp, 3 months ago. The figure kneeling at the door. She'd gone over the footage twice already, trying to, but there was something else. 2 days after the footage of Junho leaving Hwarang at the building, there was a second clip. It showed Haewon arriving at work at 7:38 a.m., pausing at the security post, crouching. The dog, Hwarang, climbed toward her. She held him for 31 seconds. The clip was not long enough to see her face. Then she stood. She looked around. She looked down at Hwarang. She went inside. Hwarang wasn't in the footage after that, Bora had checked. The building's security log showed a dog being collected that evening by someone from an animal shelter, a shelter Haewon had quietly begun funding 6 months later. Bora put this together carefully, piece by piece, and when it was assembled, she sat very still and pressed the heel of her hand to her sternum. She did not go into the office. She did one more thing. She sent a car to pick up Chae Misson. Misson arrived at 5 p.m. She was not what people expected from the photograph. She'd cut her hair shorter since then, and she had grease still under her thumbnail from a morning job. And she looked at the lobby of Seoul Capital's headquarters with the expression of someone who is not intimidated but is cataloging everything carefully. Bora met her in the lobby. Misson said, "Is she okay?" Bora said, "I don't know yet." Misson said, "I brought something."
She produced a small package wrapped in a convenience store bag. Bora didn't ask. She took Miseon to the elevator and pressed 31. When Bora knocked and opened the door, Haewon was standing at the window. Her back was straight. Her reflection in the glass was composed. She had been standing there for approximately 2 hours. "Choi Miseon is here," Bora said. Haewon didn't move. "The woman from the journal," Bora added, unnecessarily. Haewon turned around. Her face was controlled. Her eyes were not. Miseon walked in. She stopped in the middle of the room. She looked at Haewon directly. 2 women measuring each other. 2 people who had loved the same person in completely different ways. Then Miseon set the package on the desk. She said, "He left this with me. He said to give it to you if—" A pause. "He said when?" Haewon looked at the package. She didn't move toward it. Miseon said, "I have his voice, on a voicemail from December. He'd left it by accident. Called me while I was driving and didn't realize. I've listened to it." She stopped, steadied herself. "I can send it to you, if you want." Haewon said nothing. Miseon continued, "He talked about you the whole time. He didn't know I was recording. He was just talking to himself while he walked somewhere. He said, she knows everything. Haewon knows everything. She knew the name of every bird we ever saw. I should have just asked her. I should have just let her help." Something in Haewon's face shifted. Miseon kept going. She was looking at the window now, not at Haewon, the way you look away when you're saying something that might be too much. "He wasn't angry at you," Miseon said. "I need you to know that. I knew him for 3 months and he talked about you every day and he was never once angry. He loved you so much it made him stupid.
He thought protecting you meant hiding. He thought love meant not being a burden.
She paused. He was wrong, but he was trying. Haewon made a sound. It was just one syllable. Junie. Then she crossed the room in 3 steps and sat on the floor with her back against the wall, and she pressed her hands over her eyes and she made no further sound. She just shook. Mission looked at Bora. Bora looked at Mission. Then Bora quietly left and closed the door. Mission slid down the wall and sat on the floor next to Haewon. She didn't say anything. She stayed. Haewon opened the package 3 days later alone. She'd spent 2 days, one in the office, one at home, one she didn't account for, in a state she later described to no one as the place between before and after. A place where you know something has changed, but you cannot yet find the exact shape of the change. On the 3rd day, she sat at her kitchen table with the package and a cup of barley tea, and she opened it. Inside, a photograph. A small composition book, different from the journal. A folded piece of paper.
She opened the paper first. It was a drawing, done in pencil and colored pencil, the kind you get in a child's art set, though the hand was not a child's, careful and deliberate. A family, mother and father in the back, smiling. A girl and a boy in the front, the girl with her arm around the boy's shoulders, the boy grinning with his whole face. And at their feet, a small brownish-yellow dog, one paw raised slightly. In the corner, in her brother's handwriting, My Family, by So Jun-ho, age 21. I know they can't all be here, but they're all here. On the back, in smaller letters, added later, Nuna, please eat something warm. I'll be watching. I love you. Jay. Haewon pressed her thumb against the drawing. A tear had landed on it. She pressed the tear dry before it could spread. Part 4. After. After. 3 months. It was not a clean healing. There was no clean healing. There was a lot of sitting very still in her apartment.
There was the period when Bora took over most of the company's daily operations and did not comment on this, did not explain it to the board, simply handled it with the efficiency of someone who has made a decision about where their loyalty lies. There was the week Haewon spent not working, which she had not done since she was 19. There was the night she drove to Mapo-gu and parked in front of the building that no longer had Mr. O's dry cleaning shop in it. It had been replaced by a convenience chain. And she sat in the car and tried to see it, the room above it, the window facing a wall, her brother in there with his composition book and his dog and his over-the-counter medication and his particular variety of love that expressed itself by hiding. She understood it. She hated it. She would have done the same thing. She called Mission in April. Mission picked up and said, I figured you'd call. Haewon said, did he talk about the birds? A pause. The birds?
We had a field guide when we were small. I used to read him the entries. He remembered everything. I wanted to know if he talked about it. A longer pause. Then Mission said, he told me once about a heron. He saw one by the river after his first diagnosis. He said he sat with it for a long time. Haewon closed her eyes. He said you would know what kind it was. Gray heron, Haewon said. In Seoul, by the river, in October. Would have been a gray heron. Is that a good kind? They mate for life, Haewon said. They come back to the same nest every year. A silence. He'd have liked knowing that, Mission said. Yes, Haewon said. He would have. The Junho Foundation was announced in June. Haewon presented it herself at a press conference. She was precise, controlled, and in front of 500 journalists and a live stream audience of 3 million, she said, My brother Saw Junho died believing he was protecting me.
He died believing the most loving thing he could do was make himself invisible. I want every young person navigating a serious illness to have what my brother didn't, a path toward help that doesn't require them to erase themselves to use it. The foundation will fund early cancer screening for people under 30, hospice and palliative care access for patients without family support, and a network of small shelters for animals who need somewhere to go. She paused. She said, "My brother died with a dog in his arms. He spent some of his last money making sure that dog was taken care of. That seems to me like a person who understood what mattered. I'd like the foundation to try to honor that." She did not cry at the press conference. She cried in the car afterward, quietly, with Bora pretending to look at her phone. "He would have thought this was too much," Huo said. Bora said, "Probably. He would have told me to just eat something warm and stop showing off."
Bora said, "Also probably." Huo wiped her face, looked out the window. He was often right about things. Mision's shop opened in September. Huo offered to fund it. Mision said no. Huo offered to invest. Mision said she'd think about it, which meant no. Huo said, "He wanted you to have it." Mision said, "I know, he told me. I'm going to build it myself because that's what I told him I'd do." Huo looked at her. "That's what he'd have said too," Huo said. "I know," Mision said. "We were alike, me and him, stupidly stubborn." "He wasn't stupid about it." Mision looked at her. Neither was he. The shop was called Mision Motors. It was in Mapogu, 4 blocks from the dry cleaning building. On the opening day, Huo showed up with 2 things, a barley tea from a vending machine and a small frame photograph that she'd had made from the original, the one from the security footage, Junho kneeling by the door, Harang's tail visible and blurred.
Mision hung it in the shop. She put it between 2 actual shop notices. "No credit cards under 10,000 won," and "If you tell me I'm wrong about an engine, I will prove it to you." It looked right there. Park Ji-soon came to see Huo in November. He was not what she had expected. She had expected someone who would want something, acknowledgement, access, a follow-up segment. He came with nothing. He sat across from her in a coffee shop near her office and ordered only water and said, "I owe you an apology." Huo said, "For what?" "For the way it came out, the broadcast. I should have come to you first, in private. I handled it." He paused. "I wanted the truth to come out, and I thought the most direct path was public. I didn't think hard enough about what that would cost you." Huo looked at him. She said, "If you'd come to me first, I would have destroyed it." He said, "I know. That's why I didn't, but that's still not the right reason." She looked out the window. A couple, passing with a child between them, each holding one hand. The child was being swung between them. "He wrapped the journal in a plastic bag," she said. "He tied it shut so the rain wouldn't damage it." "I know. He was trying to be found. He was trying to... He left it somewhere findable. He wrapped it to protect it. He wanted someone to read it." She stopped. "He wanted me to read it." Park Ji-soon said nothing. "I think," Huo said slowly, "that you did what he would have wanted, even if it was hard, even if I hated it." She looked at her water glass. "He always knew that the direct path was the right one. I was the one who..." She stopped again. "There is something else," Park Ji-soon said. He reached into his bag and produced a small envelope. "This was with the journal when we found it. I held it back because the timing didn't feel right. I've been carrying it for 8 months now." She took the envelope. She didn't open it. "What is it?" "I don't know," he said. "I didn't open it. It has your name on the front." She turned it over. Her name. In Junho's handwriting, which she knew as well as her own. He'd had terrible handwriting as a child, cramped and too small, and she'd spent 2 weeks of a summer teaching him to make his letters larger. His handwriting had been large ever since. She had done that. She had taught him that. Nuna. Just the one word on the envelope. She put it in her pocket. She finished her water. She said, "Thank you for bringing it." Park Ji-soon nodded. They sat together for a while, in the way of people who have been through something difficult together without choosing to be, and have arrived on the other side of it at a tentative, careful understanding.
She opened the envelope that night, in her apartment, with the drawing on the wall and the barley tea going cold on the table. Inside, a single index card. On it, in that deliberate, careful handwriting, 10 things I want you to know. 1. You are the strongest person I have ever met, and I mean that as a description, not a compliment. You are so strong that sometimes people forgot to ask if you were okay. I forgot too. I'm sorry. 2. The bird guide is under my bed at Mr. O's, or it was. You can have it back. 3. Mom's recipe for japchae is in the small notebook I kept in the blue bag, behind the lining. I wrote it down when I was 15 because I was afraid we'd forget. 4. You were right about the tree. I was an idiot, but you came with me anyway. 5. I know you've been funding the shelter. I saw the records. I didn't say anything. 6. Harangue loves sweet potato. Don't forget. 7. You don't have to forgive me for going. I understand if you can't. But please try to understand that I went because I love you, even if that was the wrong way to love you. 8. You're going to be okay. You've always been okay. The difference now is you'll know it. 9. Find the gray heron entry. Read it again. I think I understand now what you meant when you said they come back to the same nest. 10. Eat something warm today, Nuna, and tomorrow, and the day after that. Every day, okay? Every day. I'll be listening, Jay. Heywan sat with the card for a long time. Then she got up. She went to the kitchen. She put water on for barley tea. While the water heated, she stood at the window and looked out at the city, which was dark and enormous and full of people doing impossible things. She thought about a heron by the river. She thought about a boy with a too large handwriting and a dog in his coat and a composition book wrapped in plastic against the rain. She thought, I'll find the entry. Tomorrow I'll find the field guide and I'll read it. The water boiled. She poured the tea.
She sat down at the kitchen table with the card and the drawing and the steam rising from the cup, and she thought about gray herons who come back to the same nest every year, and she thought about her brother who was 21 years old and knew the name of every kind of love except the kind that asks for help. She wrapped both hands around the cup. It was warm. Epilogue: Things that happened after. Heywan hired a private investigator who spent 6 weeks confirming what the journal described. Every detail held. The kimbap shop, the bus terminal, the vet in Mapo, the warehouse.
Mr. O, now retired, who produced the key to the old room, which had been rented and cleared and rented again, and the bird guide was not there anymore, but the small blue bag's lining had survived a donated clothing drive and ended up in a thrift shop, and someone had found the notebook inside and listed it on a second-hand platform, and Bora, who had been quietly looking for 3 months, found the listing and bought it and delivered it to Heywan without a word. The japchae recipe was there, behind the lining in Junho's 15-year-old handwriting. Heywan learned to make it. She made it badly the first 6 times. By the 7th, she had it right. The Junho Foundation grew. In its 2nd year, it funded early screening programs in 12 cities. In its 3rd year, it partnered with the University Hospital to establish a young adult oncology unit where patients were not required to have a family member listed as emergency contact, where a friend, a neighbor, someone from the building, anyone who showed up counted. At the unit's opening, a young resident asked Heywan where the policy had come from. She thought about Junho, sitting on a clinic floor with 94,000 won in his pocket. She said, "Someone I knew came very close to getting help once. What stopped him wasn't the cost, it was the form. He didn't have someone to put in the box." The resident nodded. "So we're removing the box," Heywan said. Mission Motors expanded. It became 3 shops over 4 years, then a small training program for young women who wanted to work in automotive repair. Mission ran it with total authority and 0 patience for people who questioned her methodology. She and Heywan had dinner occasionally.
They talked about engines and funding, and occasionally about Junho, in the careful way of people who share something precious and handle it gently. Once, Mision said, "He told me once that you used to read him bird names like bedtime stories." Haewon said, "I did." He said it was the best thing, being read to like that. Haewon said, "He was a good listener when he was small. He'd fall asleep before I finished the entry. I'd just keep reading anyway." Mision said, "Why?" Haewon looked at her tea. "Because he was asleep," she said, "and I didn't want to stop talking." 11 years after the broadcast, a documentary was made about the Junho Foundation. The director asked Haewon, on camera, "What did you learn from your brother?" She thought for a moment. She said, "That love is not the same thing as protection. I knew how to protect people. I learned that from watching him. He was so good at protecting. He protected me right out of his life.
I thought I understood what love required. He showed me I had it backwards." The director said, "What does it require?" Haewon said, "Staying visible, even when it's inconvenient, especially then." She had the drawing framed properly in the 3rd year. UV protective glass, archival matting. She had it done by a conservator who specialized in works on paper, who handled the index card drawing with the same careful seriousness she would have given a rare watercolor. It hung in Haewon's home office, above the field guide, which she had recovered and repaired and placed on a small shelf. The gray heron entry was bookmarked with a torn piece of paper. In the margin, in a hand she didn't recognize at first, hers, at 16, she had written a single note. "They come back to the same place. They always come back." On what would have been Junho's 30th birthday, Haewon went to the river. October, cold. The herons were there. They were always there in October, standing in the shallows with that particular patience. She stood on the bank for a long time. She brought barley tea in a thermos. She drank it slowly. She thought, he would have been 30. He would have been taller than me by now. He never got the chance to be taller than Dad either. He ran out of years before he ran out of things to become. She thought, he would have been an excellent engineer. He thought in systems. He understood how things connected. She thought, I should have looked harder. I should have, but I didn't know what I was looking at, and that is the thing I have to live with. The central fact, the thing that doesn't change no matter how many children the foundation helps, or how many forms we remove, or how many times I remake the japchae. She thought, he knew that. He knew I would feel this way. He wrote 10 things on an index card, and the last one was about the tea. Every day. Okay? A heron landed 4 meters away. It stood very still. It looked at the water. Then it looked at her. Then it looked at the water again. Haewon said quietly, to no one in particular, Gray heron, Ardea cinerea. They mate for life. They come back to the same nest every year. They have a wingspan of 175 to 195 centimeters. They can stand completely still for hours, waiting. The heron stood still. He would have liked knowing that, Haewon said. He liked things that waited. The heron did not respond, being a heron, but it stayed. She finished her tea. She went home. That night, at the kitchen table, she opened her laptop and typed a message to the Foundation's program director, approving a new initiative for the following year. Mobile screening units that could reach rural areas, find the people who weren't near the clinics, who were navigating impossible situations in rooms above dry cleaning shops with no one to list on the intake form. She approved it. She made barley tea. She sat at the table with the cup in both hands, and she thought about how far a thing could travel, how one boy's particular way of loving, turned inward and hidden, had found its way outward anyway, had found its way into 12 cities and 3 shops and a documentary and a shelf of bird guides and a conserved drawing on a wall. She thought about nests. She thought about returning. She wrapped her hands around the cup. It was warm. In the margin of the gray heron entry in Heywan's handwriting at 16, they come back to the same place. They always come back. The note is still there. The field guide is still on the shelf. End.